Everyone to 20-minute tech break. My name is Valerie Wynn. I'm the marketing specialist at Eagle Dream Technologies. So we are here every other Friday at 12:30 p.m. taking on a different topic. So if you're a newcomer, this is how it's going to go today. So we have 20 minutes, 4 questions, 2 experts, and we'll be covering 4 high-level points, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So this week we'll be discussing from instinct to data-driven, how Transcat is transforming into a data-driven organization using a data lake. So we will be featuring Transcat's Andy Quaranto and Heather Healy, and Eagle Dream's Brianna Butaccio. So Andy, if you'd like, you can feel free to introduce yourself, and then we can go through introductions.
Sure. Andy Quaranto. I'm the Vice President of IT for Transcat, and I'm responsible for everything from software development to infrastructure and data and analytics there.
I'm Heather Heel. I am the Director of Data Compliance and Process at Transcat, and I'm currently running the Data and Analytics program under Andy.
I'm Brianna Butaccio. I'm from Eagle Dream Technologies, and I'm a senior cloud engineer. I work on a lot of projects with data lakes and CI/CD pipelines, and I've been at Eagle Dream for about 4 years.
Perfect. Thank you, and let's get started.
All right, so to kick it off, what drove you to embark on this data transformation journey?
So the main thing that drove us to embark on this journey was just the ability to accurately answer questions through data. We had a lot of instances where you'd be sitting in a meeting and you'd hear somebody say something like, I think this is what's going on, or I felt like this was the right decision to make. So, we wanted to get our company to a point where we would be, driven by data, using facts to make decisions. That was really the big reason that we went down this path.
All right, so I know we started this data lake process about 4 years ago, and it started out with a really small POC. Can you talk about the decisions you made to move forward and expand the project?
Yeah, absolutely. POC first started off, we were doing a little bit of performance data analysis, really trying to see what Quicksite could offer for us. Was the Amazon stack the right place for us to be? And I think those early, indicators that we got from running through that POC really showed us that this was the right thing for us to do. Once we got the data into the appropriate format, it was really easy for us to just throw things into Quicksite and then start just analyzing to see, what's the data telling us.
So what roadblocks did you face along the way?
So I think initially roadblocks were around just getting acceptance, that everybody in the company had their own little silos, their own little ways to report the data. And we really had to put some effort in to sort of break that culture and, get everybody to understand that really the right way to do this is, one unified reporting source where we're all comfortable that the data that's coming out is accurate and verified. And I know, Heather, you probably ran into some other things if you want to add on to that.
Yeah, I would say, outside of the data itself, figuring out how do we access the data, where are the data sources, just understanding the kind of the people and process part too has been difficult as we've gone on. We're kind of changing mindsets here, and sometimes bringing people data that's contrary to a long-lived assumption that they had in their mind. So sometimes just bringing those things, you're getting a lot of just personal roadblocks, but also, identifying in our processes, which is ultimately the source of our data, where we have bad processes that are causing bad data to come out, and being able to, identify those processes, research them, and ultimately recommend changes. That's been really difficult and would be virtually impossible if we didn't have somebody at Andy's level in our organization advocating to allow us to make those changes, and sitting with the executive team and saying, this is what we need to do to get to the next step.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And from the person implementing the data lake, I think that one of the biggest roadblocks is understanding all of the data at a deeper level. as you said, there's so many different people at your organization using the data in a million different ways. And so early on in the project, it was mainly Andy and I going back and forth over email, Andy answering questions. And so that can take some time. Andy obviously has his own responsibilities outside of this data lake at the company and things he's still expected to produce. So as the project went on, getting almost a dedicated resource on the Transcat team to help answer on-the-fly questions was very helpful. They pulled on a resource who works with the data every day, and we have a chat open that we can go back and forth at any time. He's hands-on with the data. He can answer a lot of on-the-fly questions, and that's helped the process move along a lot faster, and it's been really helpful for us. So what type of tools and services did you love? Is there a favorite?
I think, on the visualization side, Quicksite definitely be, one of the things that we really like. I know we're using S3 and Glue, and one of the tools that we brought in, which I think was a really good decision, was the tool that lets us replicate all our data to one place, so that it makes it a lot easier for Brianna and the Eagle Dream team to pull everything in. So I thought that was a great decision that was made at some point.
Yeah, so for
Heather, if you have anything. Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, just really the Quicksite Quicksite is what I'm using mostly, and it's been really helpful. And also it seems like they're constantly pushing out updates on Quicksite. So every once in a while there'll be something that's been a challenge for us, and then all of a sudden that capability shows up in Quicksite, which has been really great.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of a background on the tools, Andy was mentioning the database migration service, which is the tool that we use to connect from their source database to transfer all the data into S3, which is a simple storage service where all of the data lake data lives. It's stored there because it's so cheap. And then the Quicksite tool has been great because it makes it easy to share the data with a lot of people. So it's one spot to store the data, and if there's an issue or an update, we make it in that one spot, and it goes out to all of the users who are using the data.
It's relatively cost effective too. I mean, it's been pretty cost effective for us.
Yeah, I think compared to Power BI, it's significantly cheaper. The Quicksite model is pay per user, which has been very cost effective as we're progressing through the POC, because you don't need your whole company having access to it right now. I think it's made it cheap and effective to build it out with only a couple users on board. So what do you wish you knew before you got started with this? Any advice for companies looking to embark on the data lake journey?
Yeah, I would say the biggest piece of advice would be get started sooner than later. We had started on this 4 years ago, and I honestly wish we would have known where we were going to wind up today then, because I would have pushed this a lot harder. We're at that point now where we have a lot of really great reporting starting to come out of Heather's team, and it's been amazing to be able to just go in and answer some of the questions that have been around since I started with the company a few years ago. On the what did I wish we knew before we started, I would say some of the things would definitely be around how the data is stored in a couple of our source systems. There's definitely some processes that I know Heather referenced earlier that we go through internally that make it really hard for us to associate the data at the end of the day with, say like the appropriate cost to revenue, that type of a thing. So I think if we knew that beforehand, we definitely could have cleaned some of those things up before we jumped in and really started producing reports.
Yeah, I would just say, how challenging it could be at times. This stuff it's very exciting, and it's easy to get very excited about what we're going to do and what we envision the end goal to be. But sometimes, you're moving at what feels like a snail's pace, and sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. But just, to be able to get to where we are now, that was all necessary. And so, just knowing that there were going to be those tough times would have made those a little bit easier to handle.
Yeah, it is definitely a work in progress. It's definitely going back and forth, making adjustments along the way, readjusting expectations, and
Right. And you know, finding out what is possible, you know, is it's kind of, that's always changing. Um, but we're always learning too. So that's really good.
yeah. So for people who are interested in identifying if a data lake would be a good solution for your business, a great way to get started is to take your first steps with Eagle Dream's Data Lake Readiness Assessment. Essentially, we meet with you and discuss your data sources and business goals, and then identify if the data lake is a viable solution. So if you're interested, you can learn more at eagledream.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Andy, Heather, and Brianna for your discussion. So we're going to be going into Q&A now. So raise your hand and we can call on you, or feel free to type your question in the chat box.
So while we're waiting for questions, Andy and Heather, did you want to talk about some of the key data that you pulled into the data lake and why you chose to bring it in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we started off with data around the productivity of our calibration technicians. The big driving factor there was just to try to figure out, do we have labs where people are more successful or they get calibrations done faster, and then taking that and saying, okay, well, if in Rochester this is done really well, how do we apply that to a different lab? We've dug into profitability data now for our customers, and we're really starting to examine all kinds of work in progress. Anything else you want to add to that, Heather?
Yeah, no, I mean, really, we're just kind of really building out some interesting financial views on to data that we haven't been able to look at before. So that's been me. I have a finance background, so that's been the interesting part to me, is to kind of say, all of these things that where we've aggregated costs in the past, being able to kind of assign them and differently than we have and really look at a deeper level has been very, very exciting.
Well, we do have a couple of questions. So our first one is from Matthew, and his is, can you comment on how to build an advocate in one's organization to support an effort like this? So I don't know if Andy...
Yeah, so I think, luck for me, I'm in a good spot. I report right to our CEO, and we were able to demonstrate to our CEO the impact that the data and analytics program could have in getting the data lake and warehouse built. One of the key things was there was this very long-held belief that a certain thing happened a certain way in our company. And when we started doing the really early prototypes, I was able to pull the whole executive team in a room and show them that long-held belief was wrong, and we were able to show it with data. And once that happened, we really started to get buy-in from the rest of the executive team, because you see that, okay, well, if that was wrong and we always thought it was right, what else are we maybe using to make a decision that's just not fact-based?
Nice. Okay, so we have another question from John. Prior to the data lake and your data-driven approach, what criteria was being used to make decisions?
So everything, for the most part, it was reactive. We didn't have a way to proactively look at things and make decisions. It was a lot of just gut feel, tribal knowledge, if you will. I've been in this, people have been in the industry for 20 years, and they just use that experience to make those decisions.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. We were really kind of limited to some mostly financial data that, generally comes out after the month is over, right? So you're kind of looking 3 weeks after your period has ended and saying, gee, what happened? Versus now being able to look real time effectively and say, this is what we're seeing right now. what do we do? You know, how do we pivot? How do we prepare for what's going to happen tomorrow and next week versus, you know, what happened last month?
All right, thank you for answering John's question. So our next question is, how did you determine whether a data lake or data warehouse was the right solution for you?
So we're actually using both. The lake feeds the warehouse. And we actually worked really closely with Eagle Dream on this. So we had a proof of concept set up. We got some data loaded into the lake. And then we really just went back and forth discussing what's the right way to do this? Is the lake the right thing and why? And I don't know if Brianna, maybe you want to add something onto that as well.
Yeah, so the data lake has everything under the sun. I know you guys have 7+ databases and you weren't sure exactly which data you're going to need. So we pull everything into the data lake so you won't ever be missing any data. And then the data warehouse was driven based off of your report needs. So the Transcat team shared their current reports that they wanted to replicate. And then from there, we were able to design the data warehouse to optimize the report results, making sure that they're able to load fast in real time.
And one of the last questions are from Jessica. What doors have opened for you and what capabilities do you have today?
So, you know, we are now getting to the point where a lot of things that were done manually in-house are all automated. So Quicksite sends an email out every morning with the reports, which is great. And that's really opened up time for other people to analyze the data. Now, instead of spending your day prepping data, sending out the same canned reports you send every day, you can start focusing some of that time on asking questions of the data. You know, what does this mean? Why do I see these numbers that look this way? And, you know, we're really also starting to be able to open the doors up to some of the other business units so that they can take the data sets that have been built and start creating their own reports and dashboards, which is just something they couldn't do before because everything was so manual and painful.
Yeah, agreed. You know, being able to shift people to more value add activities has definitely been an outcome of inputting the data lake or implementing the data lake. Also, just like Andy had alluded to, getting people the data at their fingertips through Quicksite. You know, once we help them build it out, they can go in there and apply their own filters and kind of slice and dice the data themselves, the actual business unit owners. So that allows them to really gain a level of knowledge about their business that they may have otherwise not really have known if they didn't get a chance to play with their data themselves.
All right, well, I don't believe I see any more questions, but we do have a couple of minutes. So if you do have any last minute questions at all, feel free to raise your hand, ask another question. Otherwise, thank you, Andy, Heather, Bree, for joining us. It's always great to hear customer experiences and having an expert kind of talk about that too to our attendees. So thank you for joining us on Friday, on this lovely Friday. So with that being said, oh wait, we might have one more question. Oh, no. All right, so like Brianna mentioned, schedule a data lake readiness assessment with us today to see if a data lake could be right for your organization. So if you feel free, you can visit the link at eagledream.com/data lake assessment. Then we will have somebody contact you in return. For our next 20-minute tech break, it will be September 11th with pathways, about pathways to Windows on AWS with an expert from AWS and Eagle Dream. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you all have a great weekend.